Welcome, everybody. I'd like to open the October 18th, 2022 regular meeting of the school committee. And let's start with open public comment. So I see we have some folks here to speak. And with that, Mark Harrilshu, may I please welcome you on up? And anybody else you want to have join you? If there's anybody else coming up with you folks, if you would spread out or share the mics up here just so folks at home can hear what you're saying, we'd love to welcome you. Just please introduce yourself.
Sure.
And all your compatriots.
Yep. Good evening. My name is Mark Rulshoe. I am the Scoutmaster for Troop 7 here in Foxboro. And tonight we have several members of the troop here to observe the meeting. Part of our citizenship in the community merit badge requires that they come and witness a town or a school meeting, and so we are here to see how it goes. You guys want to introduce yourselves real quick?
I'm the SPL. My name's Ethan. Hi.
Hi.
You guys want
What's going on? Just
Speak up, don't be afraid.
Yeah. My name is Bilal Bukas.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming.
I'm Callum. Ryan Field.
Mr. Field, welcome.
Hello, I'm Road.
Rod, welcome.
Liam Woods.
Mr. Woods, welcome.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Seriously, I love that.
That's great.
I love that as a merit badge, too. Are there any other folks who are here for open public comment that we might have missed? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. But before I do, I'll remind folks that, case in point, we do welcome folks at our meetings for open public comment at the beginning. There's also a community inbox where folks can send their questions, thoughts, and anything that they may have on their mind. Basically, it's like an email system, and it comes out to all of us, and we all get it whenever messages come through. So thank you. With that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. And looking at the August 23rd, 2022 minutes, do any committee members or members of the admin team have any comments, edits, or concerns? Or questions, I guess?
I don't. If I don't hear any, I'd move to approve the August 23rd minutes.
I'd like to second.
Lovely. All in favor? That is 400, and it shall pass. Lovely. I think that's all we had for minutes. Beautiful. Moving on next to our teaching and learning highlight. We're going to be introducing the new incoming METCO coordinator. And with that, Amy, would you like to take it over?
I would love to. I would like to invite up to the guest table Miss Chantel Wyllie. As she comes to get seated, you have her resume within your packet. Our former METCO coordinator left unexpectedly for higher ed at the end of August, and so we were at a place where we needed to post, and Dr. Burroughs ran that search. And in the end, we are just so excited to have Miss Wyllie here with us. She just has been with us for about a week now and has hit the ground running with both feet. Can tell you, I know that Dr. Burroughs did a lot of the, she did all of the interviews with different groups, and the rest of us were involved in interviews, but a lot of the reference checking too. And just the conversations that Dr. Burroughs and I had, just everyone spoke so highly of Chantel, talking about her commitment to students and that she is so committed to education and students and being there for families. She has some experience, as you can see in her resume, from being many years ago in METCO, so it's almost like she's coming home to come in as our coordinator, but she's an experienced educational leader. In many aspects has served as a principal. So education is something that's near and dear to her heart, and that came out loud and clear in the multiple interviews that we had with her. So I also have heard from both of our principals at the middle school and high school. They've said the same thing, that she has been out meeting students. She's been in the lunchroom talking with students that are in the METCO program, students that are our resident students. So I think she's been in a lot of places in a very short amount of time already. So Chantel, if you want to just give a little bit of information about your background and why you were interested in coming to Foxboro to be our METCO coordinator.
Well, thank you, Amy. That was so nice to hear all those kind words. I did mention to the students who I met at the middle school, they did sort of a mini interview on the first day, getting to know me. and they asked why was I interested in coming. And I mentioned to them that METCO was something that was close to my heart. And when I was deciding to come back into the field of education, I was looking online, and this position really just jumped out at me. And so it was actually the position that I really cared about the most. Felt like it was something where I can connect to my roots in Boston, but I have moved closer here south. And so I was looking for something where I really could be a liaison, so I can connect with the teachers and administrators and students and families all at the same time. So that's something that's huge for me.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it? Oh,
Can
okay.
I ask?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I mean, I know it's very early, but beyond the, the obvious, not obvious, but what you so clearly stated, being that connection between students, school, and family, are there any, I guess, nascent, at least beginnings of goals that you're seeing that you'd like for the program or for the district? I know you may not have that formulated after a week, but if you have anything that you thought of perhaps in looking at the job, I'd be curious to know.
No, I think a few things. I think that one of the things that's the most important that I've talked about with Stephanie a lot already, is a collaborative effort. And I totally see that already with the staff. I've been invited to many different classes, different meetings, whether it's working with transportation or people in the art department, physical ed, mental health, things, just everything all at once. People have just been coming to me and really just including me in making sure that the students have time to connect with me, making sure that I have contact information for the families,
Okay.
and really trying to find a way to make sure that the Boston students are connected to the Foxborough students, that they don't feel like they're separate, that they're part of this district, and they're all one. And so I'm looking forward to making sure that it is a collaborative effort, that we're all together, and that it's not just something where the METCO person is working with just METCO students. And also with the families. And so I know that the Boston families want to really feel like they're connected as well. And so I would like to have the families more engaged with some of the activities that are happening in the school, and also have some of the Foxborough students be able to visit Boston, whether it's visiting colleges or museums, and just feeling like there is a connection.
Right. Nice. Well, that's, I mean, as you perhaps gleaned from Dr. Burroughs in the interview process, it's one of the major goals that you've just really paraphrased it, that the superintendent and the school committee have for the whole district, is that same feeling of connection and oneness that you can bring to the METCO program is what we want for all kids in the district. So I hope you do as you hope, and use your experience and your voice in a role of leadership for everybody, because at least in our experience here, people are curious and listening.
Good, thank you, I appreciate it.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee?
I would just echo what you just said, but thanks for saying that, and I hope people are listening that are here online and the public, that connections and collaborations is critical for this program. You're obviously going back to your roots, and obviously when you were a METCO aide as well, but you know it and you appreciate it. So I think those are great words to say out of the gate, because that makes a difference in the program. So thank you very much for chiming that and praising that.
Good. Thank you for the opportunity, and everybody's really been welcoming, so thank you.
Well, good. And looking at your robust resume, you obviously had options. So to paraphrase one of our prior members, thank you so much for choosing Foxborough.
No, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
staying
you.
tonight.
Next up, we have Superintendent's update. Dr. Berdos, you are yours.
So since our last meeting, we had our professional development day on the 7th of October, on that Friday. And I wanted to just bring up how positive the school safety critical incident training went. So that was the entire district, and that was really in partnership with our local police department, as well as with Synergy 911, what brought in officers through all different towns, because they're coming in from all different areas. And just the experience that the officers had, having the show of presence of our Foxboro Police Department there as well, not even some of them running the training, just being there.
Yeah.
And when you looked around the cafeteria, because we split the day into an elementary and then a secondary, and then had some kind of mixed to balance it. So you had about 150 people in each of the trainings. We started off with everyone together in kind of a whole group presentation, but you looked around, and I don't mean just our school resource officers, all of the Foxboro Police Department, just their presence just spoke so much of the partnership that we have. The training, the feedback that we had from faculty and staff was phenomenal. There's really just not any other word to describe it. People walked away feeling confident. It's not a topic that, we like to talk about, but having the hands-on training and really being able to talk through different scenarios, and not just in a school, but in your daily life and when you're out in other places, and things to think about and to plan for. So again, just the partnership with Chief Grace and all of the Foxborough Police Department and our Public Safety and Fire Department as well. It was a great training that we had, and I think it just really shows that we do have people right at the end of our fingertips here. We're in a really unique place that came out loud and clear when we think about having, an NFL stadium like we've talked about before, the training that they're constantly going through every single week. We benefit as a community, and definitely as the schools for that. So just wanted to, again, say thank you to Chief Grace and the rest of Public Safety. So that, the only other update that I really have this evening is we started today with a 2-day visit with NEASC.
Yeah.
And Ms. Ladani, thank you very much. You helped get a lot of our parents there this morning for the parent group of that. So thank you for doing that. I know Mr. Donovan was very appreciative, and I saw them come in this morning. So a great show of parents to be there. Central office, we had a meeting with them. They're in the building for these 2 days. The first day really is gathering. So this is the collaborative conference. It's the first part, and then the second part will be when they come back after about 18 months. So we're really identifying through our own self-assessment what are our areas that we've identified as areas of growth and that we want to work on. They're collecting information by meeting with many different groups. They're visiting classrooms. They're taking a lot of documents and information that we have along with the self-assessment. Mr. Rico and Dr. Wazlewski, they are chairing that. And I know with the faculty at the high school, they've all been involved. So really praise the high school, teachers and staff for what they've done to prepare for this 2-day visit. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us to look at what we do really, really well. And then where are the areas that we want to address to be able to continue to move forward. So, tomorrow they will be here as well, and that second day really is going to be additional meetings, if necessary, continue to collect any other information, and then for their team to start writing up the report that we'll receive and then we'll share once that comes out.
I think I had asked this before, but forgive me for forgetting. How long does it usually take for them to generate their first run report? I mean, I know the chair will collaborate with you,
I
but
think it's, I'm going to call on Mr. Donovan, a couple of months.
it's on that order.
In the previous process, they had the right to report, and then the NEASC organization had a vote on it.
Right.
So that is not the process any longer. So I expect that we'd have it before the end of the year.
Okay.
But when exactly, I'm not sure yet. But we'll get you that information.
Oh, that's fine.
And then the last part that I would just say is a reminder that for National Bus Safety Week, it's the 3rd week of October, and it's really important that people remember that the bus is an extension of the classroom. So when we think about behaviors and we think about respect and all of that, we have wonderful bus drivers, and we know it's hard to have bus drivers. It's a shortage across the country, and it's a challenge for us as well, just as it is for everyone else. So just the, importance of thanking our bus drivers, and at the same time remembering that it's an extension of the classroom.
Here. Nice. Well, at least, and if any committee members have questions or comments, please chime in. Going back, I'd love to just reiterate your thanks to everybody at the high school team and your team, because just I've lived through the NEASC thing, I've been on the evaluation teams before, and I'm sure perhaps Mr. Pearson has too. It is a robust process. I mean, it's heavy, and when schools and school districts use it well, it's when they take it seriously and use it as a genuine opportunity to reflect, and that's something I found in my dealings with Foxborough Public Schools that people embrace wholeheartedly. So I'm excited for you all in the process, although I do empathize with the late afternoons and evenings that you all go through to make those visits happen. So thank you for all the effort.
And I would I'd like to comment on the safety training. I also, completely unsolicited, I had a couple of teachers in town who just commented to me that they found that professional development day was very worthwhile. They thought it was time well spent. They felt very comfortable coming out of it, that they were prepared and they would know how to handle situations. So I'm glad that was the feedback that you shared as well.
And one thing that we did do different, and I want to give credit to Dr. Burroughs for this, is that we had Dr. Larry Epstein, who's done a number of as a psychologist, has done a number of parent evenings for us.
Yeah.
We had him for the full day, so if we had anyone, because school safety and all of that can be a heavy topic, and for any staff members that felt that they were maybe a little overwhelmed or they needed someone to talk with, that was Dr. Burroughs' suggestion, and he was there, and then Mr. Michael Isaac was able to orchestrate to have him there for the day. So I just think that really was a great addition this year. And we did have some staff go and visit with him at different times of the day as well. So it was a calming presence.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the coordination. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Thank you so much, Dr. Berdos. Next up on the agenda, we have Foxborough High School overnight travel. Mr. Donovan. We love hearing about overnight travel happening again.
Especially this one. This
is robust.
Thank you for the opportunity. So this is actually this trip by Dr. Wazlewski was a trip that was first approved 3 years ago before COVID and was canceled.
Okay.
And so some of these students were the original students that were supposed to go on that trip.
Wow.
And so they'll be able to go as seniors, and there's been some new students who have joined on along the way. So this is really seeking approval for a trip that was once approved, but is now a revised itinerary and some different students. So we wanted to make sure that you saw it as the final payments are beginning to come in ahead of the normal kind of fall presentation of potential travel.
So what's the travel for? Like, what group is traveling? That was one thing I couldn't
Yes.
define from that.
So there is not this trip is not tied to a specific class.
Okay.
So I believe there were some trips pre-COVID that were available, similar to like the Costa Rica trip that occurred over the summer, that were just open to all students. And so this is one of those trips, which is different than like the Spanish exchange trip that's tied to being in Glasgow, the French exchange trip, or some of the other social studies trips that travel regionally, Salem or other places. So it was open to all students. And I think the total number is like between 8 and 11.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Nice. Well, and I think isn't like, if you're running it through EF, I mean, they have a long history of running these trips, and they're usually like pretty good cultural exchanges. They hit up the history and things of that nature too. So I think anybody who goes is going to learn something.
Yes, and their process as a in our world of COVID, they have greatly revised the supports that they offer to schools and to kids in traveling, and it's a better product. As a consumer, it's a much better product than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mayor.
Please, Dr.
So
Burroughs,
this
please.
is also a trip that Dr. Wazlewski has led for many years.
That's right.
And to be all the English connections and the literature and all of the history and everything, it's during February vacation, but there is a lot, other than just the experience, a lot of learning that it's tied to.
Right.
And it's been just really great to be able to see that we're bringing it back.
Absolutely.
And a big thanks to Dr. Wazlewski for doing it, right? So we're now seeking an opportunity where we have an educator taking our students during vacation on an opportunity and an educational trip, and taking their vacation time as well. So it's always appreciated, and I'm sure the parents have some comfort level that they're going with our faculty member as well.
Yeah. I think this is the 5th or 6th time she's done that trip.
Yep,
Lovely.
that's what I thought too.
After a hiatus.
Yeah.
A little too long. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the travel.
I'd like to second that.
I'm sorry, I should do that. One more note. So this is student funded, so the school isn't doing funding for this. It's just we just need our approval. So I just want to make sure that
No, everyone knows.
anybody that's listening hears that. So,
Right.
I'm sorry. Now I'd like to make a motion to approve the travel.
I'd like to second.
All in favor? 500. Enjoy the trips, folks.
Thank you very much.
You can stay.
Oh, I can stay. Oh, you know what my other...
Yeah, yeah, I think you got a triple header tonight, don't you? Lovely. All right, well, let's move on. In a continuation of our annual look at school improvement plans, tonight we have secondary school improvement plans. Last meeting, for those who remember, we looked at the elementaries, and they had a nice, robust presentation and discussion about that, and tonight we get to look at the secondary schools. So with that,
Pass the clicker.
the floor is yours.
I'm happy to click through, but if you,
Where do I point?
the window, excellent question. I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah. I know, you always want to point at screens, right?
Never would have guessed that.
Now with technology, yeah.
I just needed to turn it on.
Not obvious.
There we go.
There you go.
So it's before Ms. Frazier and Mr. Donovan get started here, just as a reminder for those that may not have heard the earlier meeting in October, that you're going to see this greatly aligned to our district plan when you look at it and the scope of the pillars, but when you look at the formatting, and most importantly, the focus on students and student growth and our growth as schools and then as a district. But that alignment that's there, that at the end, I think that you'll walk away, after looking at it, if you haven't already, is that we're all on the same page.
Thank you. We'd like to start just by thanking our school council members who collaborated with us on our school improvement plan. So for the Ahern Middle School, our parent representatives were Carrie Weston and Christy Yankee. Our faculty representatives, Zach Diorsi and Kirsten Howden, and our community representative, Mike Weber.
At the high school, we have two student reps, Stevie Strecken and Nathan Ehrman, Aaron Ernst and Susan Daly as parent representatives, Mr. Weber from Foxborough Community Access, and then Dr. Ozlowski and Mrs. Geffers as faculty reps.
And thank you to those members of the council who are here tonight as well.
Okay, so as Dr. Berdos mentioned, you will see a lot of alignment and commonalities between our plans from middle school to both elementary and high school. We'll start with Pillar 1, facilities and infrastructure. Provide a safe, secure, supportive, responsive, and innovative learning environment for all students and staff. I'd like to just highlight a couple of things that are unique to the middle school. And then Mr. Donovan will do the same for the high school. So a couple of things that we have in progress, as you've heard from the other buildings as well. We're working to implement the recommendations from the safety audit, the training with Synergy 911, and that work that's continuing as well with the Foxborough Fire Department and Foxborough Police Department. We are also working to update some of our learning spaces, particularly in our Project Lead the Way classrooms, to increase the opportunities for that hands-on collaborative learning where students really are working together on some real-world problem solving. We're looking at the furniture in those spaces, the way that furniture is set up, the way the technology is being accessed by students within the classroom, and just trying to get creative about how that may look for the different courses that we offer. For example, we have our medical detectives course, green architecture course, app creators, and computer science for innovators. Those are the 3 rooms that we're looking at on our second floor at the moment. We're also looking at our group spaces. We're working with our speech therapist and our occupational therapist to rethink our group spaces. We have those open spaces. There are 2 for each of our grade levels. I'm really rethinking those so that we have some space for students to have some continued opportunities outside of those Project Lead the Way classes for that hands-on collaborative learning together in small group instruction, but also looking at opportunities for some calming stations, sensory stations for students within those spaces as well.
Nice.
Then we just had a couple of projects that actually have been completed at this point in the school year that we're excited about. I know you heard from the elementary schools and their presentation about the communication board and on the recess playgrounds. We have one as well at the middle school to help facilitate communication among all students, especially including those students who have some complex communication needs. And we updated our bell system this year to incorporate music for passing time. This is tied to the philosophy for our 5th grade transition program, the web program, where everybody belongs, where the belief is that music really helps to foster community within our schools. It also supports students in their movement and transition within the building during the school day.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Who picks the music?
So far, I have, but I'm so glad you asked because we are having conversations with students about the different ways that can look. We have students in a music elective right now creating music that we're hoping to tie to the bell system at some point in the year too.
That's Thank you.
So it's like pre-recorded, you can
Yeah.
program it, that's good.
So at the high school, we have many of the same things with our security audits and working with consultants. Our main office entrance, actually the vestibule was just completed yesterday, which we were very excited about. So the next stage in that process is installing fob access at a couple more doors around the building. So we'll have some at the exit to the science, kind of the science exit that faces the softball fields, as well as a new fob reader for the music and at the gyms. And that will allow us to transition away from keyed entrance to the high school for all staff and coaches, and to be able to control better who has access and when they have access to the building. And then with our safe arrival application, which the district rolled out this year, we're working to integrate that. We track attendance block by block. And so we have been working kind of through the logistics of that to make sure that we can account for everything as students' attendance, and that we're not overriding it. It's kind of like a logistical back-end computer issue, but it's really important that we do it and get it right, and we have really good data so parents can log in and see class attendance, and that's just as accurate as the daily attendance.
Okay. Pillar 2, teaching, learning, and pedagogy. Provide opportunities for educators to collaborate and create common equitable learning experiences. So the Ahern Middle School this year, along with the Burroughs School, have joined the IGO and Taylor schools and the MTSS and UDL Academy. So we are participating in the academy, which is providing a lot of professional development and coaching for our staff in inclusive practices, particularly in universal design for learning and in co-teaching. We've been fortunate at the middle school in terms of our PLC meetings and SST meetings, where the middle school schedule was already designed to have meetings occurring within the school day. Right. So for us this year, the focus really has been to shift the focus of those meetings and really developing and strengthening our meeting norms, protocols, and focusing on the use of data in our discussions to support all students and their success. Along with that, this year we're establishing an instructional leadership team at the middle school that will be made up of faculty that represent each of the grade levels and the different content areas. And they'll serve as an advisory board to myself as the principal, but we'll also be working together to develop a vision for what these strategies and practices from the academy really should look like in our classrooms. And those teachers on the instructional leadership team will serve as coaches for their colleagues. So they'll be doing peer observations and giving feedback and coaching their colleagues in meeting that vision that we developed together.
Sorry, Karen, how many are you aiming for? I missed it.
How many members on the team?
Yeah.
We're aiming for 7, so we would have one teacher from each grade level, 5 through 8.
Sure.
A special educator, a teacher from the specials area,
Nice.
and one of our math or literacy specialists.
Nice.
We're working to implement recommendations from the ELA curriculum review, the middle school, where we've adopted some new resources, empowering writers, which is also taking place at the elementary schools. And we've also adopted the Common Lit curriculum for our ELA classes. And as we work on what the curriculum will look like and work to update it with those resources, we're also continuing our work to identify essential standards so that we can hopefully move toward standards-based grading for 5th grade next school year. And we're piloting this year in art and music with the hope of moving forward fully for 5th grade next school year. And lastly, in this area, where we've implemented responsive classroom in 5th and 6th grades this year. We're very fortunate that we were able to send most of our 5th and 6th grade teachers and myself for training in the summer. Several of our teachers had already been trained in it previously, and they're working really hard to implement that model in their classroom. And if you're not familiar with responsive classroom, the goal is to create safe, joyful, and engaging classrooms and school communities for our students, and to create a developmentally responsive learning environment for all students.
So at the high school, MTSS, the complete structure is new to us. We are not a part of the academy that the elementary schools and the middle school are part of. However, we have contracted with that organization to provide us some coaching and some support for our department heads as we stand up those groups within the high school. So we have an academic support team, and we have a mental health team that has been meeting since the beginning of this year. We're developing our schedules and all of the kind of infrastructure that's been a barrier for the high school in previous years to kind of get all that machinery up and running. We don't have team structures. It's just more distributed. So we're working to kind of build that workflow within our building and within our staff. And we're at the beginning of that iterative process. And so we're already into our second iteration with our mental health team about how we're working through it. And we're going to keep doing it until we get ourselves in a groove and we get that programming up and running across the building.
Mr. Donovan? Where, I mean, and you don't need to have an answer for this yet since you're just ideating it, but do the department chairs fit within that structure in there?
Yep. So our English, math, social studies, and science department heads are a part of the academic support team. The K-12 directors our department heads are not, just because they have some responsibilities in other buildings.
Right.
However, if they're supporting their teachers and working with the student in Tier 1, they're going to be a part of those meetings as we kind of work through it.
Nice. Thank you.
Absolutely. Similar to other buildings in the district, the high school is going to work with Lisa Deeker this year for the first time to expand our co-teaching and improve our co-teaching models. She has been to the high school already once, and she'll be meeting with us again on Thursday morning, which we're excited about. And she's doing some PD for teachers around the district this year as well. So we're looking really to expand our access to co-teaching for students and to really just improve that environment in general, strengthen that environment. And then for the Vision of the Graduate, the Vision of the Graduate is a indicator, it's a requirement for accreditation. So thus far, the high school has not created one. However, there was a profile of a graduate, which is very similar. It doesn't quite meet all of the indicators that are required for the Vision of the Graduate. And there's a planning, obviously we have a planning for success template. So we're going to build on those, build on that as a base. But basically build a K-12 focus. We'll have some K-12 focus groups for families and community members to try to imagine what we want graduates of Foxborough High School, what we want them to have for skills as far as job-ready skills or post-secondary skills, behaviors, citizenship, all, and have a community-wide discussion. And then kind of build that into our culture as a school and as a district. So we'll start that process in December, and we will certainly be back with more information for everybody soon.
Thanks.
So Pillar 3, well-being, provide the necessary supports to ensure healthy minds and healthy bodies for all members of the school community. So we've been working to implement the Panorama survey, as you know. We just distributed the survey for the first time this school year this week. We have a few classes still finishing up over the next couple of days. We'll be working this year really to take the data from those surveys and utilizing it to inform our discussions about student social emotional needs in addition to their academic needs when we have our student support team meetings. And we'll also be working to use that data to help us identify small groups so that we're providing targeted small group instruction in addition to whole group instruction around those social emotional skills. And those lessons that we'll be using will come from the Panorama playbook, which the elementary schools had mentioned as well.
Right.
And we're excited because we're really trying to think about how we're also supporting the social and emotional well-being of our staff. And so one of the projects that we've been working on at the middle school this year is to design a space specifically for the staff to support their well-being. So we're looking at our teacher's library and creating a staff Zen den there. So It's coming out really nicely, I think.
At the high school, similarly, we're going to work in incorporating parts of the playbook that come from the panorama data, and we're going to try to use our group guidance programming for students as an entry point for that.
Sure.
We also work with the DEI committee, the wellness committee. I really want to talk about the community wellness director position. So she is a part of our mental health team, and one of our goals this year is really to make sure that we're getting families access to all the services that we can when they need them. And so Mr. Frazier and I yesterday, along with the other principals and guidance staff, met with the members of the town's human services department to learn about all the different services the town provides residents, so that we can better to help bridge that gap if and when families need them. And so Amy Muldowney has already made herself a key part of our team, especially our mental health team. So it's been wonderful. And then we really want to increase participation and access to the community workshops that the special education department and the director that Corey is putting together, and advertising them better and trying to bring parents in, and as well as the resources from McLean.
Pillar 4, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Foster and strengthen the respect and actions of staff, students, and families to celebrate diversity, ensure equity, and practice universal inclusion. So a lot of the work that we'll be continuing to do will come from the recommendations from the district's DEI committee, but there are a couple of things we're working on specifically at the middle school. One I've talked about a lot this year at open house and at PAC meetings, but we've been working with the students to create her middle school constitution. It's just about ready for its final draft and rollout, but we met with the students. There were delegates that came from each homeroom. And shared their ideas for school-wide rules, and then myself and the assistant principals and counselors met with delegates from each grade level and narrowed those down for school-wide expectations. So they came up with 5 rules that at the Ahern Middle School will be, hopefully I remember them all, will be respectful and kind, will be inclusive, will be responsible and engaged learners, will be safe, and will be the best version of ourselves. And the students then came up with language for each of those rules for what that looks like in our school very specifically, and what it looks like in each of the different areas, whether it's a classroom, hallway, auditorium, cafeteria, arrival, dismissal, and they were really thoughtful about it and did a really awesome job with it. So we're excited to put that out there and have some visuals to support this is our school-wide language for what our expectations are of ourselves and each other. And along with we will be inclusive piece of that, we're going to be implementing the program No Place for Hate this year, which is an anti-bias and bullying prevention program. And it's meant to support schools with building inclusive and safe communities on a foundation of respect and equity where all students can thrive. So our goal this year will really be to get this started. Our students will sign a pledge to agree that, some examples of the language would be we celebrate the differences that we all bring, that we respect everybody's individual dignity, we'll speak out against bias, and there are a number of others as well along those lines, but we will we'll present that to the students. They'll sign a pledge. We'll put together a committee that will involve staff, students, and families. And then our goal this year will be to implement 3 school-wide projects for the purpose of deepening students' understanding of diversity and inclusion.
Nice. I love the constitutional format that you took with that, especially given that they're teaching civics in the middle school again now. Thankfully, I love that.
I also like the 5 ideals, because I'm looking right over your shoulder at the scouts, and I think the scouts would say they would parrot some of those same exact words. Would you not?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's pretty cool. So dovetails. We got a community group here doing the same thing.
Oh no, I hit the button too many times.
It happens.
It does.
Looks like you're getting home.
Maybe one more?
I think I switch presentations.
Paul's going back.
From here on out, you're in charge.
Always running over to you, Mr.
That's right.
We're so close.
We were really so close. Well, so while this presentation loads up,
We're so close.
two things for the high school. One is obviously working with Ms. Wyllie, our new METCO coordinator. We really want to kind of identify, we have so much programming that happens before and after school.
Sure.
We want to make sure that we're identifying the barriers and working to break them down
Nice.
for our students. And then the last one is expanding unified athletics. So we have a brand new unified basketball team, which started, they had their first 2 games last week. They have their first home game tomorrow. Everyone is invited at 3 o'clock. The cheerleaders are coming. They're going to cheer for it's going to be great. And we've had a unified track team in the district for some time. And we have a unified health course during the day that meets the graduation requirements for PE. And so this is the next logical really expansion of that program. But it has been awesome. We're 1 week in, and it's been awesome. So we're fortunate that we're in the Hockomock League, and there's a league inside of the Hockomock League.
Great.
So
Oh, thank you so much for putting the effort into that, because every school I've seen do that just loves it. It's a lot of setup in the beginning and a lot of people involved, but everything I've heard, it's worth it.
oh, it's incredible. Mr. Cusick and Corey have been fantastic
Great.
in helping to make all the logistics work.
Oh, that's wonderful.
All right. Thank you.
We'll see if you missed anything on that last slide.
I think
We got it. We hit it.
I was following. I think he hit all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Beck.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Beck.
Thanks for doing the unified. I can't help say it because I live it every day. It's so important. And if you've never been to a unified athletics event, it's so immediately obvious of the vehicle of athletics to teach life lessons through athletics. It's instantaneously obvious, right? Because there are moments in athletics that it gets a little crazy. But when you go to a unified event, it just shows exactly what sport and athletics can do to teach life lessons to all the people involved.
Yeah,
It's huge. It's just so
It's huge, and it really is. And anyone who comes to see our games, we have one tomorrow and then one next week, comes to see the kids play. It is a totally inclusive environment. Of kids on the floor, and it is just fantastic. There's no other. The kids on the court they're all equal, and it's just an incredibly powerful experience to be a part of.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and I appreciate too that, the second bullet that you mentioned there too is in a similar vein in terms of making sure that all Foxboro students can access a full range of experiences that the town works so hard to bring forth for all our kids. So, thank you. Any questions or comments from committee, admin, any follow-up or anything that we need?
I thank you both. Certainly thank all the different council members for volunteering their time. I can imagine this takes a lot of effort. Even what you preparing the presentation for us, I do appreciate, as we discussed at the last meeting, how it does mimic or take the structure that we've been talking about and applies it here as well. Just 2 questions, or 1 question for each of you. What are you most excited about on this whole plan? And I'm going to ask you the same question, so it's really 1 question for 2 different answers.
Oh, I think what's tough about that is that there are so many things.
Pick 2 then.
I was going to ask if I could pick 2.
But even 3, if you really can't, if you have trouble deciding, but.
No, if I had to pick 2, I would say the work that we're doing to support teachers with universal design for learning and co-teaching, and the way that we are approaching it with the instructional leadership team and the coaching that we're getting both from Desi and Dr. Lisa Deeker. I feel like it's really meaningful, and we're seeing some shifts very quickly that are really going to have a meaningful impact on students and their learning in a very positive way. And I'm also really excited about our work with the Adjourn Constitution and No Place for Hate. I'm going to put them together. It's really 3, I guess.
That's good.
Because again, I think we have students who are craving those avenues to have some real discussions about what they're experiencing and what it looks like for them at school and how we can best support them, but really giving them a voice as students in what they want at school and how they create their own experiences there, I think is really important at the middle school level.
Thank you. Thank you. You did, it wasn't the music, because that would have been my, no, it's just,
Well, if you asked me in September, I would have said the music.
I have a playlist I'm happy to share. I
I'll
can't,
take it.
So, Jim, well,
So I think long-term for the instructional environment at the high school, the work that we'll do with co-teaching, the work that we'll do and how that impacts our program of studies and course offerings and our schedule, that I think is going to have the greatest long-term benefit to all students in Foxborough for years to come. So I think as we start that work and really kind of dig into it, it's a multi-year process for us. That's certainly something you're going to see over the next couple of years, because we're just at the beginning of it. Of our next iteration of co-teaching, right? Because we have a good model now, and we know kind of the direction we're going to make it better. I think the immediate stuff that's going to make a huge difference in the next couple of weeks, our unified program has really made an enormous difference right away for the kids who are directly involved. We want to keep making that program bigger because there's no reason that next spring when track comes, it can't be much bigger. We've averaged somewhere like 5 or 6 athletes. We should easily be able to get 15 or 20. You know, that's a program that should really get much bigger, much quicker. And I think the same in having worked with Ms. Wyllie for the last, week and a day or so, the amount of energy that she has brought into our building, she is everywhere. And in her experience as a school leader and her, as we've started to go through some, she's going to be a part of everything at the high school. And so having her as a resource for kids, for families, for us, is also going to be a real, I think, transformative experience for a lot of people, for kids and for staff. So I would say those are the neat.
if you had to pick a couple, those would be the ones.
Those would be
Thank you so much.
Highlights.
Thank you. I'm done.
Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you. And Mr. Donovan, you've heard me say this before when you were coming on to join the admin team, but I hope you continue to use this year to keep copious notes and a long to-do list, and your plans will evolve as you go, because I know you'd said that you're going to do a lot of listening and learning this year. It also looks like you have a lot of things, concrete things on your to-do list, so I just wish you happy learning with all of that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Frazier, for all your detail and leadership.
Thank you.
Wait, before you leave, we have to vote.
Yes, I did this last meeting, too. Actually, yes, folks, we do vote to approve these plans. So if there are no questions or comments or other follow-up information you need from our building leaders, I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the secondary school improvement plans as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Let it be so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you.
all the work.
And thank you to your staff
Great.
and all the council members for putting this together. It's a lot of work. Thank you for that.
I just noticed it myself.
I know, and listen, it was like
Dorothy Presser, thank you.
the last minute, I circled action prior to, and I just
Well,
breezed
now we
right
can
over
have
it.
Mr. Beck
Those
switch it
letters
over.
are great.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. And as we're transitioning to the next report, we can take a moment to wish Mr. Beck, who runs all the tech here, a happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
He wishes I had done that off mic.
I think we should sing.
Supposed to sing?
Only if the mics are off.
Okay, we
Anyway.
killed enough time. We're on to the presentation.
That's it. Hey!
It's got to stay on the agenda.
On that
Next
note,
up, we have one of my favorite data nights is truly it is, actually, the 2022 Culture and Climate Survey results. Dr. Berdos, please.
Okay, so there are a lot of slides that you have here. You only see 65 out of 115 that we had, and that's just the district data. We have the same amount of slides per school because we're presenting district data, but each of the schools have all of that information. And this really, administering the survey, it's our 10th year to administer it, and it's really important for us for transparency, for decision-making, thinking about getting again, it's perception data. It's not like random sampling. So we keep in mind it's perception data, but it's important to be able to triangulate that with other things such as when we think about the panorama screener and taking that information and what we're hearing from students, what we're hearing from parents. Students, it's grades 5 to 12, parents and faculty. At the same time, what are the other pieces of data that we have that we can look, triangulate? And one of the things you'll hear as we talk about some of our areas of growth that have been identified amongst our areas of need, I should say. Students have voiced this, parents have voiced it, and faculty have voiced it. When we get to under safety and behavior as an example,
Cool.
How that connects to a survey that we've done in the past that's more about actual usage when it comes to something with like vaping as an example. And I just kind of put that out there at the beginning because I think it's really important to remind ourselves that this is perception data. It's given at, the survey is administered at the end of the school year. And our participation rate has continued to be really strong. We know from speaking and working with K-12 Insight through our meetings, like our participation rate, particularly with parents, is really strong. They're invested, they're involved, and their voice is being heard. And they don't see those kinds of numbers in other districts across the country when they administer these surveys. So it also helps with our, when we think about the school improvement plans, this, the district plan for success, particularly under Pillar 4, under diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging. So really getting that inclusive environment, and then having students feel that they belong, having faculty acceptance, removing barriers, and parents that it's a welcoming environment across the district and across, obviously, all schools. So the information that you have here, because there's so many slides, we'll stop a little way into this and kind of do a time check to see where we are. I'd also like to make note that we have 4 of our 5 principals here. Mr. Stanton was not able to be here due to a previous engagement, but it's also, we mentioned this at the last meeting, it's National Principals Month, to recognize them for their efforts, and being here again to have 4 of our principals here. I think it really just shows the investment. When we're talking about the information we get from here, it's utilized, it's important, and it's actionable for us. So thank you to our principals that are here this evening. So a number of the slides we'll go through quickly. If there are certain slides that we skip over, or there's ones that you want to talk, please just stop us, because there is a lot of information here. What we're hoping that we can really emphasize here is our kind of get through our highlights, talk about what we see as trends, what are the new baseline areas that we have in here as well.
Good. Thank you.
So as far as the participation, we see the participation, as I said, it's strong across all groups. It's been consistent over the last 3 years. When we look at the average participation rate over those years, we're higher than the average that we've had. So again, I think that speaks to having all of our parents engaged, our faculty, and with our students, one of the differences from the following year, we didn't have our seniors. And this past year, just with the timing, it didn't work out, the logistical part, but we had our seniors. So it really was representative of students in all of our grades 5 to 12.
Dr. Berdos, when you say seniors, is it current seniors or incoming seniors?
Current seniors, because it was given in May and June of last year. So, I'm sorry, it's our seniors that graduated.
Ones that graduated?
Yes.
Okay,
So
thank
this
you.
was May and June administered
Okay,
last year.
thank you.
So we wanted to spend some time on the slides that are really the parent voice and what they're seeing and feeling, and looking at that over a trend of the last 3 years. This shows 3 years, but we do have 10 years worth of data, so we're able to go back to see that overall message really is that it's stable, it's high praise for academic preparedness and for our faculty and our staff, and I'll have Dr. Burroughs give some more specific highlights.
Sure. So overall, we did see a slight dip. If you can move to the next slide. There we go. There's a slight dip in parent perception data over the course of the pandemic, but we do see, when we're looking across those years, we see a return to pre-pandemic numbers for families. One strength that we notice is our parents are very engaged. They're checking in on their child's homework. Our parents feel their students are prepared and that our expectations are appropriate. If you take a look, one of the things that we wanted to highlight this evening, if you take a look, my students take an interest in the activities such as student clubs, sports, and field trips. You'll notice there is a significant difference across the years in that data. One of the things that we're very excited about, as we spoke about earlier this evening, that trip to England, our last school committee meeting, we spoke about that DC field trip. So there's a return to those activities, and we anticipate those numbers are going to continue to increase for us.
When we look at school leadership, I think that really what we're seeing here is that there's not any issues or concerns. And when there are any issues or concerns, they're handled very quickly in an appropriate professional manner. Parents, if they've had that, that's strong praise for our leadership, and that they're responsive. And that you see the majority there, that when they're saying, are their concerns responded to, or may not always agree, but you've got the professionalism, you have the responsiveness there, and I think it really speaks highly of our school administrators. But at the same time, you don't see a lot of concerns or issues that are there. This particular slide, one of the very last bar that you see up there where it says, I'm satisfied with opportunities for me to be involved virtually in my child's school. One of the things that we realized was we inserted the word virtually in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But prior to that, it was about parents feeling they had opportunities to be involved. So when you see that difference there, just the addition of the word virtually,
Sure.
Does it make the question invalid? Is it different? It's a conversation, but at the same time, we think about the world that we've been living in, during that time period, and trying to measure that. So I think at the end of the day, though, when you keep in mind the percentage of some of those differences, it really is, as Stephanie was saying, we're returning to those pre-COVID percentages. And even if you have a 1% difference, that's about 5 people when you see a difference there.
Is there a thought, I'm sorry to ask a question, but is there a thought of changing it in the future to virtually or in person? Kind of
I think we need to go back, because we are doing both now, and to be able to tease that out.
Okay.
So the 18-19 data is not a virtual question, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I.
When we look at safety and behavior over time, what we see here is representative of national trends as well. That as we've come out of these 2 years that have really been impacted by COVID, that behaviors, respect, dysregulation, that has been on a rise. We hear it from parents, we hear it from students themselves, and then we definitely hear it from faculty, but it's something that you hear across the country when we think about, we know school is really important, and it has shown that, the structure and knowing how to do school by being disruptive, we see that within the data there, for sure. We also know that it impacts social skills, being able to talk with each other, with their peers, being able to collaborate. That's impacted in the classroom by having that disruption, and those are things that we see there. One of the areas where it says staff members and students respect one another in school, that goes to those social skills. That goes to being back in a structured environment, and then also learning how, in some cases, to get along with each other when they've not been not been in person all of the time throughout all of those years, that disruption. We also know, too, that social media and other things come into play, and that can be outside of the school day and impact the school day. when we look at the question there on during the school day, vaping is not a problem in this school. This is one that we really took notice to. When you look at that question across students, faculty, and parents, and that it's not a problem, and looking at the level of disagreeing or strongly disagreeing, it comes out loudest from our students. And them saying that, actually, it's 43% compared to faculty at 55% and parents at 49%. So we see it as far as they're saying that it's not a problem. They're strongly disagreeing or disagreeing that it's not a problem. When we look at that, we know that that is something that takes administrators time. It takes teachers time. We hear from students themselves. And it's something that it's with all, it's not just Foxborough. It's across all of the Commonwealth, it's across the country, and we've made changes in our health curriculum. But in this case, where this is perception data and saying that it's a problem, that's why we want to go back to a survey that we used to give every 2 years, which was the Pride Survey Communities at Risk, which is asking students themselves directly. It would be just middle school and high school, but actual usage. So we could look at that compared to perception. So when we see about from our health and our wellness and our well-being pillar within our plan for success and school improvement plans, this is an area that we're really taking great attention to.
Dr. Berdos, how, if you happen to know, roughly how many years did the district collect that other survey where they asked students directly?
The last time we administered it was 2016.
Yeah.
And we administered it every 2 years.
Was that through health
I know that we
classes?
went back as to 2012.
Okay.
I don't know if 10 or 8. I'd have to go back and look.
Sure.
But the difference in that survey now, because the wellness committee that you've heard from here in the past, we've been looking at those surveys, working with that committee and looking at the questions and some things that have come out of the Department of Ed. That particular survey in the past was more about tobacco and alcohol use, and now they've put vaping in there because it has become such an issue across the country.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
One of the other areas here on this particular slide, again, it's hard for you to see up there on the screen, but when we look at some of the numbers as far as in regard to like bullying or threatening behavior that are lower and that's consistent as far as, okay, while the numbers for bullying and threatening behavior are lower, those numbers have been consistent, which strengthens the data point and our attention and everything that we're doing when we think about social emotional learning, mental health, well-being, all of the work that we're doing there. When you heard about from Ms. Frazier and No Place for Hate, responsive classroom being implemented, the focus on a caring school community, that all ties into that. So whether it's respect, whether it's conduct, whether it's behaviors, we're working on that through those other programs that you've heard about. So we anticipate to see some changes there in the future, but we also know that we have impacts from the last couple of years of what we've, lived through as well. So I think that it's really important for us as, we integrate this data and the programming that we have and thinking about how we're addressing those concerns.
Can I ask a quick question about that? So in regards to like the bullying, threatening behavior, is there a difference in parents' response based on from the younger grades versus the older grades? I don't know if you have that.
We've
information.
seen that across the 3 areas. That would be the area. So a couple of the slides I think that'll be helpful for us to get to is what are the highest ranking areas and what are the lowest ranking. And what you see is the area of respect or behavior, and then you see that in the area of vaping when it comes to across all 3 areas there. I'm trying advance to, did I get to transitions there? Yes.
Yeah, your transitions.
On the next couple of slides, you'll see measuring the middle to high school transition. It's been a fairly consistent and positive response. Parents are happy with the transition from middle school to high school, and happy with the transition from elementary school to middle school. We have several programs in place to support students as they move into the Adjourn, and also as they move into the high school. We also are very collaborative. Our middle and high school principals are working very closely together to make sure that that middle to high school transition is feels accessible to our students, and that kids really feel ready for ninth grade.
And these
So this section kind of summarize the parent voice here when we look at what were the highest ranking indicators and what were the lowest ranking. We also looked at this and compared to the last survey administration. Were the highest ranking indicators the same? And so what we found here was for highest ranking indicators for parents, its students have access to computers and the internet for the purpose of learning. Not surprising, particularly where we've gone one-to-one and all the work that we've done in providing resources in the area of technology. Also, highest ranking with parents that students are providing the instructional materials needed for classes. Those are the same highest ranking indicators from last year as well. What you see here that's new as far as ranking really highly among parents is them saying that they're being kept informed about activities, whether it's student performances or workshops or other kinds of events, and then also being kept informed about their students' grades. We know that that's been very important on the minds of parents, particularly after what we've been living through. So to see those ranked really highly, that was important for us to see. And then you see that they're ranking their students' school is clean. And that's, the work of our custodial staff and maintenance and really working hard there too. So then it was a matter of, well, what dropped off from last year? What was highest ranking as compared to this year? And it was feeling safe at school and making necessary health and safety measures. When we think about the height of COVID and all of the safety measures and everything, that was on the mind of many. So that would make sense that it was there last year and it dropped off, and what you're seeing there new is what we've tried to work really hard on is the communication, whether it's through Power School Access and being able to be informed of different events and things. What's on the mind as far as your lower ranking areas from parents? What's the same is being kept informed about what they're learning in school. So part of that in conversations we've had when we think about the secondary level compared to the elementary level, that's within Teams. It's students are within Microsoft Teams and all the learning there. Parents don't have access to that. They have access like to Power School when you're looking at grades. So that part makes sense. It's easier for elementary parents to kind of have an idea of, what learning is taking place as far as content. And the other one that was the same as last year was my students are excited to go to school. This is district data. If you were to look at that by elementary versus middle or high with parents, you'd see difference because of the level of excitement. I have a senior in high school, and whether he's excited to go to school every day, it depends on the day. As far as what is new here, though, and this goes back to what I was mentioning before, as far as from the parent's perspective, bullying and threatening behavior is rare in this school, and during the school day, vaping is not a problem in this school. So we see that as an area that parents, it's on their mind, and it's a concern that they have, and we share that concern across from faculty, and then also we see that with students as well.
All right. Dr. Berdos, just 2 points. This is all great data. I appreciate all the detail. I appreciate all the feedback. I know there was a decision made not to break down in these percentages between what level, whether it's elementary or secondary. It would actually, in my opinion, be useful. The overall percentage is good, but I would love to see on some of these things what percentage of the 80%, how did secondary responses come in versus elementary responses, or middle versus high, whatever we do it. That would be interesting to me to see that, because I do think there are probably some differences there. I know you have school-level data, but to find a way to try to represent that in the numbers, to me, would be interesting and useful. The second thing is, on this particular slide, I would love to see just what you did verbally, but I would love to see another column on here that said, this was a carryover, this is a consistent top 5, or it's consistent bottom 5, or this is new on the list, and also a note underneath, like if you see like the AP top 25, what schools dropped off, or which schools are on the bubble, kind of what's just underneath this would actually be interesting to me as well. What's dropped off, or what's potentially bubbling up that we need to pay attention to. That was really, I yelled that at you. I didn't mean to yell that at you.
No, I think you make a really good point, because when we look at that question on vaping's not a problem, you don't see that with the elementary parents.
Right.
You see that more with high school parents, which makes sense to us when we
Right.
think about the age
Right,
of
we can
students.
make assumptions about this based on the content area, but it would be interesting to just see, are our assumptions correct? Or is there something that we are just not aware of? So, yeah.
Well, that's fine.
And it would be interesting to see the difference between the middle school and the high school. Is there a difference, or is it the same parents' perception between the two? So I definitely agree with Rob on that.
And usually, I mean, usually those differences are pretty clear developmentally, you know, and at least from the years that I think we've looked at, there's so many different ways to slice this data. There's so much data, and so I appreciate the critique. But yeah, usually those differences can be very telling in terms of where our kids are at a given age. Thank you.
So we're going to move on to faculty and their perceptions.
Sure.
Fairly similarly, with respect to the parent perception data, our faculty perception data has remained fairly consistent. We have about an 80% participation rate for our school faculty, which is fantastic. Our data is very representative, and we've stayed very consistent. Our staff are rating the overall school quality as excellent and good across those 3 years. There's been some variation between excellent and good, but we've stayed above 90% in total across the board across those 3 years.
And I think many faculty nationally might have gone down at the end of the year last year, because last year, it's just nationally, we know, was a very challenging year for learners and faculty.
Sure. And thank you for mentioning that, because I think what is really wonderful about our faculty data is you see very consistently we're not seeing as much of a COVID dip as we might in some other groups.
Sure.
We're seeing our faculty extremely collaborative with each other, happy with the high standards and expectations.
Yeah.
There is a slight dip in those in the learning standards and expectations, because as we know, that learning experience fluctuated during the pandemic. But overall, there aren't any data points that really stick out like a sore thumb here. Our faculty are happy with our academic standards. They're supporting each other. They're working together to support kids, and it's really nice to see.
Nice.
You know, again, in this data point, you know, our biggest strength here is our faculty focusing on getting our students the help that they need and offering a variety of engaging courses and activities. They're really proud of that, and so are we. You see slightly lower numbers lower numbers in students at school are treated fairly. That'll show up in our social emotional learning discussions later on, focusing on relationship skills, self-awareness, and social awareness is something that we're focusing on as a school, and through our mental health and social emotional learning work. We're supporting our staff and understanding how to support kids in this category as well.
When we look at faculty's perception of school leadership, I think this really speaks to a very positive relationship between faculty and leadership, as far as the availability for school leaders to be there, to be able to be responsive, for people to feel that they're listened to, that again, that's really important, because we know that it's been really hard. It's been really hard, particularly for the last, I'll say 3 years now. And to see the high marks there for faculty with school leadership, I think that's really important, and it speaks to our school leaders. The overall message here, I think, is they feel respected, they feel supported, and they have relationships there that are really important.
Just a quick question, because it was useful on the parent survey. Each percentage point represents about how many?
2 people.
Thank you.
You knew I'd have it.
I knew you did. It was useful, and
No, it's good for
yeah.
context.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's very helpful for me, too, when I'm
Right.
taking a look at the data, because you might see some dips, but keep in mind that 6% dip that you see right there is, every 1% is 2 people, so that's 12 people.
Right.
And because it's such a small number, we can identify who those folks are, and we can make sure that our teachers feel supported and that there's joy in that teaching and learning experience.
Well, even when you look at, a question like teachers have time available to collaborate with colleagues, I think a lot of the effect of the baseline that you start with shifts when you go through that pandemic year and all the learning model shifts, where you get a bunch of faculty who realize, oh my gosh, I really actually do need to collaborate with more people, and have a new appreciation of that. At least that's my interpretation.
And I was going to talk about that data point in
Please.
particular. We are, as you know, 4 out of our 5 schools are participating in DESE's Inclusive Practices Academy. As part of that, the elementary schools that are entering into year 2, actually along with the Burroughs Elementary School as well, are implementing professional learning communities. So they have embedded in their schedule professional learning communities and time to collaborate with each other. That is something that's lacking at the high school level. We're aware of it. It's something that's shown up in our NEASC self-study report, and something that we are working toward mitigating. But I think what you do see, despite the fact that we've increased the amount of collaboration time, I think what you see in that faculty perception data is the difference between grade bands.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In that data, and it is something that we're trying to work on and trying to fix.
Well, what a perfect thing to bring up through NEASC.
Absolutely.
Dr. Burroughs, just one other question on the numbers, right?
Sure.
And I know we talked about it, this is the very beginning. So I look at 2018, 2019, there were 263 responses. When I look at 2021 to 2022, there are 213 responses. Am I reading that correctly?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's what those, I'm assuming that's what those numbers mean. I don't know, I should know this, I guess, but I don't know what that represents of the total potential teacher population. And Dr. Berdos, that may be on the cover letter, I should go back to it. That to me, looking at on the faculty side, I know you're not done with this, that to me represents a bigger data point than some of the actual questions. What kind of engagement drop did we see? Or is that, I guess I should ask that question, is that a concern that we saw? I mean, that's a 20%, over a 20% drop in 2 years. And I realize there's a lot of 2018, 2019 to 2021, 2022, it's apples and oranges, I get it. But that still seems to be a big drop.
Don't forget, through the budgeting process, we did have a number of staff reduction areas, middle school, where we dropped 5th and 6th grade because we didn't have the student count.
Right.
So if you go across, while we picked up, social workers and some other things, our classroom teachers actually did have a dip.
Classroom FTEs down.
From 2018-19 to current.
Right, which is, so going back to what is the potential population
Right.
versus the people that choose to respond. And that's, again, I know you guys are all over it, it's just that number keeps, every time I look at a different chart, that's the number that keeps sticking out. It's not the individual questions, it's this number on the bottom, like, do we have an engagement?
And so that comes to who the survey is administered to. It's your faculty, so your professional staff, and it's also your educational assistants.
Okay.
And so that's where you can see some fluctuation as far as engagement. We see it more with our educational assistants than we see with faculty. So that's where the numbers, when we look at 2018-19, where you're looking at that in factor of 263 as more compared to 228 or 213, some of that has to do, honestly, with email addresses and how it's come out of our system and gone out. Some not getting the survey. So there's some technological aspects of that too. But as far as the audience, it's both faculty and educational assistants. And we've heard, even this past year, I didn't get it. They can go and get it from another link, but that's been something that we've had to work out there with numbers. So you picked up on that.
Thank you. And I'll try not to interrupt you again, Dr. Burroughs, I'm sorry.
You got questions? You got questions?
So when we look here on the safety and behavior, compared to when we look for parents before and this being faculty, we see the behavior concerns highlighted on the teacher survey as well. It's consistent with the parent concerns. Again, we know from the national data and statistics that's something that's going across. We definitely feel that here. But it still continues to be a strength despite behavior concerns that we see as far as the data that we have. It also, we look at this as it shows the importance of school routines and expectations,
Right.
and a social environment for students. And that when we think about what can we do to help facilitate an environment that is very positive, it goes back to some of those things that we've talked about. And we implemented the responsive classroom at the elementary level 2 years ago. We've now moved that up to the middle school when we look at second step and the social emotional, the playbook and the lessons that go through in really building community and belonging with students.
Nice.
This summative slide, if you will, when we look here for highest ranking amongst faculty, the one that is the same is that when we look at from last year, again, highest ranking is when a child in the school has a school problem, a teacher, a counselor, or other staff member is available to help, and that teachers in the school work together to ensure student success. So when we think about the supports for students, faculty, that's where they're seeing, the really, the high supports for students. What has popped up here new this year as far as highest rankings would be, I feel, respected and supported by other teachers in the school. I think that really speaks to the caliber of our faculty and staff and how well they work together. The school is clean and well-maintained with working climate control, et cetera there. That is something that teachers have made notice of all the efforts of our facilities, and that curriculum, instruction, and assessment are aligned to support student learning in the school. I mean, when we think about that's what we're here, to support students from an academic standpoint, and then also to support them from a social, emotional, mental health. So when you see that highest ranking from faculty, I think that that's really important to note. The lowest ranking, the top three are the same three that have been there from last year as far as looking at following rules and conduct and the appropriate level of influence on decision-making in the school. There's been a lot of decisions that have not been, they've been out of the control of faculty just from what we've been living in. What you see that are new are those last two. And again, that goes back to behaviors and discipline and vaping. So that's what we're saying. We're seeing that from students, we're seeing that from parents, and we're seeing that from faculty.
Right.
I just
It's not
have
surprising.
one question. Going back to the prior one that I thought was kind of notable, whereas it was saying most students respect staff. And for the 2020 and 2021 year, it went up to in the 90s, and then there was a drop between that year and this past year. I just found that to be interesting, and whether there's some reason besides what we kind of already know about the effects of COVID and kids coming back into the school more full-time.
Sure.
Between that kind of, it went up and then it
I see the
dropped.
question you're looking at, yeah.
So I thought that was just an interesting statistic or looking at it.
What dropped from the highest ranking from before, again, this is faculty
Yeah.
perception,
Yeah.
is students being comfortable with interacting with their peers. So
Yeah.
not surprising there. Also, the school promoting acceptance and safety at school. So you think about all of the health measures and everything else, that's what's dropped off from that highest ranking. As far as what's dropped from lowest ranking was faculty concerns with disruptive behaviors. So you've kind of got it going both directions, depending on what question that you're asking.
Well, and if, I'm just piecing this together, and you all have gone over the data much more than I have, but if the line of logic is that one of the biggest gaps that students exhibited coming out of the disruptions of the pandemic was less comfort and skill in working peer-to-peer and peer-to-adult, that's going to manifest in what most teachers would call behavioral concerns. Is that, am I reading that, am I connecting those dots correctly as you all would?
Yes, when you ask the questions, can I talk with my peer? Am I comfortable talking,
Right.
in those group settings?
And keep in mind, too, that those are social emotional competencies.
Right.
So, so part of the reason why we are placing that emphasis on social emotional learning and making sure that that's part of our multi-tiered systems of support
Right.
is because across the board, not just in Foxborough, I believe the statistic is 56% of schools nationwide reported an increase in adverse student behavior.
Yeah.
Last year alone. So we're not alone in this. It's something that's a national concern, and of course our teachers felt it, our students felt it, our parents felt it. We all had that. We all lived through that experience, and we know what it was like. And that's really the impetus for putting those social emotional learning competencies in place in the classroom and within our MTSS structures.
Well, and we'll talk more about it as the academic data, data comes out later this fall, and we chat about that. But the sense I got from admin the last year and a half is that you're already used to collecting data on the academic and skill gaps in those areas, and that's a playbook that teachers are used to filling in gaps with that. And this is where the area for needed professional development is. Am I reading that correctly?
And I think the important takeaway, not to get too nerdy, is that
You're in good company.
Those overlap. So if we're not focusing on students' social emotional competencies and building that skill set, building their ability to collaborate with peers, their ability to advocate what they need,
Sure.
their ability to be able to assess what their own needs are. And really be able to identify their strengths and areas of growth. If we're not focusing on those, we know that academic performance is hurt when we're not focusing on those.
Right.
So it's a big part of educating the whole child, making sure that those social emotional competencies are at the forefront. It's how we interact with each other,
Right.
And it's how our kids and our teachers engage in that learning process.
Well, you can't learn if you can't self-regulate, or you can't learn effectively if you
Correct.
can't self-regulate, so we have to go there.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to skip through all of the student slides and just get to the summative slide to look here at the highest ranking and the lowest ranking indicators.
That's fine.
And for our students, what's notable is the highest ranking indicators, those top 4 that you see there. Those have been consistent. They've been the same for the past few years. It's really refreshing and great to see that bottom indicator making its way to our top 5, that our students feel prepared to do well in their grade level. That's refreshing to hear. It's something that our teachers and our families have been very concerned about. So when students are self-reporting that they feel prepared, it's it's a nice thing to hear. Over on the other side, our lowest ranking indicators stayed essentially the same as well. There is an outcry if you look at that bottom 5th indicator that creeped its way up. Kids want to know how the lessons that they're learning relate to life outside of school. I think I've heard that from my own children as well. So it's not surprising to see that, and our emphasis on project-based learning through the English curriculum review and the training that we're implementing for our teachers to be able to expand the scope of project-based learning at the high school level speaks to us really understanding that that's a need. We also sent several teachers to Project Lead the Way training over the summer. That's another program at the middle school level that provides students with those real-world opportunities. And it's something that we're thinking about constantly as we're looking at the digital learning tools that we have at our disposal at this point. We really want to make sure that learning is relevant and that our kids are connecting to their learning. So we agree, and we're going to work on that one.
That is one that K-12 Insight has said that they see that rises up for everyone across the country is the connection to real-world experiences.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So I had a quick question real quick on that. I find it really interesting to look at the I Get Enough to Eat at School, the difference between the 2018, 2019, and then the last 2 years when food has been more available and it actually dropped. I'm just curious to really, are you guys looking into that and as to why that's the kids' perception, or is it just kids' perception that they never get enough to eat?
Interesting by age.
Is there something more behind that?
Seriously.
I would just add to that, too, that our student data is just based on grades 5 through 12. It's not our elementary students that are reporting. So it's student perception data for our middle and high school students. And yes, lunch has been free for the past few years, so it is surprising to see that.
I think that plays a part in it with it being free. So now not everyone, but a greater number of students are accessing free lunch. So then if I'm going to get it for free, but it's not enough.
Yeah, and I think if you remember the whole thing that we went through a cycle on as far as what you can put on a plate, volume-wise, the point is not to fill the plate to the top and have the kid basically gain 1,000 pounds because you just kept putting food out there, but it's to put nutritious food out there.
Right.
Not all students would accept what's on the plate as what they want to eat, and therefore, because they do. They make sure that there are the vegetables, the greens. Although I will say that I would encourage any one of you and any parent who would like to see it at some point to go through what the cafeteria line looks like at the high school or the middle school. I'm amazed at what they have as options, to be honest with
Much
you.
better than what we have.
Oh,
It's better than what we
not even
have.
close.
I know it's better than what we have.
But again, volume is volume, and it's not necessarily, you get a big football player versus, a smaller person on the line.
Yeah.
I know some small people eat more than big people, so I don't know. But,
Right.
I think overall, it is a nutrition-based meal still, so.
Which is a nice measure.
I just thought that was interesting.
It is interesting.
And Dr. Burroughs, again, same question. Each percentage point represents approximately how many?
Oh, hold on.
Did you say that and I missed it? I
Hold on
apologize.
just 1 second. I didn't have that one memorized for
12,
the
right?
students.
12, isn't it?
It might be.
We have a much higher participation rate
Right.
for a lot of these.
Numbers.
It's 11.
Nice, Richard.
You're close. But you may have based that off of just this current year's numbers.
Right.
And the way that I calculated that for all groups was to average the participation across the three.
Okay.
So we can both be right.
Yeah,
Great
that's
job.
okay. Only to be right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this next section that we wanted to go through, and I'm doing a time check here to see with the agenda and where we are. These are new areas when we look at social emotional learning and the core competencies of CASEL. So it's baseline data for us. So it's very interesting to see where our different groups fall in these areas.
And we're going to focus, just for lack of time, on the student slides for this section.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about what each one of these competencies are, just so we can understand why are we asking those types of questions for this particular category. So we use the CASTLE framework, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning framework. There's 5 key competencies. You'll see 5 competencies, the 5 competencies being asked across this survey, but we also delve a little bit deeper in some of the categories where they are really big conversations like growth mindset or diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a couple of extra questions on there. But when we think about self-awareness, the way that CASTLE defines it, it's the ability to accurately recognize your own emotions, thoughts, and values and how they influence your behavior. So when we take a look at what students have identified as their strengths under this category, their strengths are, they're showing that they're recognizing their own feelings and they're able to self-assess their strengths and limitations. So students feel ready to be able to assess, here's what I'm good at, here's what I need help with. However, their opportunities for growth are showing that they need help with explaining how they feel to others and explaining what their needs are to others. So they are able to self-assess, but it's that ability to communicate out, here's what I need at this moment.
Yeah.
And you'll see here the parent and faculty data, and we can speak to that, but we're going to try and go a little bit quicker. For self-management, the CASTLE definition is the ability to manage your own emotions, thoughts, and behaviors effectively in different situations in order to be able to achieve your goals and aspirations. So our students here, they're identifying that they need support, and actually across the board, our parents and our teachers agree with this sentiment. Our students are identifying that they need support with managing their time, with not letting their emotions affect their behavior, which actually speaks to some of those earlier indicators that you all had questions about earlier, and staying focused in class despite distractions.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Burroughs. I'm actually pleasantly shocked that how closely the student data mirrors faculty and parents, actually. So just kind of interesting.
I enjoyed that as well. I think it's a really great thing when kids can self-assess where they are. It's a wonderful thing to see.
When we look here on the competency of social awareness, and that being defined as the ability to take perspective and have empathy, and just really empathize with others, what we see here from our students is that they care. They do have empathy. They're conscious of other people's feelings. They care for their, people being around them and how they're being treated. That's important. There's a consistent commitment to accepting differences and the importance of helping others. And then also, when we look at this, we see that they're ranking themselves lower on caring about global issues. But we also know when it comes to students, it's more about them and their friends and who they're immediately around. That is their immediate world. So that one was not as surprising, although, they still rank that pretty high. But when we're looking at their ability to really take perspective and empathize with others. As far as relationship skills here, when we look at this, this is defined as the ability to establish and maintain healthy and supportive relationships. And the student strengths here are, knowing how to respectfully disagree, know how to communicate with their peers, know how to communicate with others. Students feel most comfortable about their relationships as when teachers or faculty look at that question.
Yeah.
So growth mindset is something that you've probably heard that phrase used before in education. I believe Carol Dweck coined the phrase. Growth mindset is, it almost bends over a couple of competencies here. And when we think about it, how we define it, it's believing in your own abilities and your own efficacy, self-efficacy, in that you can develop the skill set and you can learn the skills that you need in order to be successful. And when we're looking at where our students are identifying that they need support underneath this category, they need support in trying new things and asking for help, which I think is nice that they've noted that. That seems to be their biggest area of growth. But their strengths, our students have a strong growth mindset. They're believing that working hard will allow them to improve, and they're using teacher feedback to improve. And those are good things. That means our kids are engaged in the learning experience, and they feel positive about the impact that they can have on their learning. In the area of responsible decision-making, this one doesn't really need a technical definition. I think a lot of us can surmise what this one means, but it's making constructive choices about your personal behavior and social interactions. Students overall are rating themselves very strongly in this category, with top-ranking indicators of following the rules and taking responsibility for their actions. Although still strongly positive, students are ranking themselves a little bit lower with standing up for their beliefs and being honest, even if there might be consequences. It actually speaks to the work that Ms. Frazier was talking about, the student constitution that she put together in those first few weeks of school, and really helping kids take ownership in their decision-making, and really feel like they're a part of that community and that it's their responsibility to speak up for what's right. So we're working on that already. You already saw that in our school improvement plans.
When we look here under the area of diversity, equity, inclusion, I think it's really important to be reminded of what this work is, and that it's about belonging. It's not about race, it's about belonging. It's about accepting differences, an inclusive environment, and really ensuring that a student's background is not a barrier for anything that we're doing with our schools when it comes to equitable opportunities. So when we look at this particular slide, when we think about students' perspective here of belonging, I think it really speaks highly of the feeling of inclusiveness and belonging. When I look at those, the second and third, where my school celebrates differences, and you see in that particular case 11% of them disagreeing there, or my school promotes an inclusive setting, and you see 7%, but you see a number of percent there almost equal of that they don't know. So those questions were asked in a different section in the past. So we went back and we looked to see, well, what did it look like for celebrating differences and in promoting an inclusive setting? We're talking about belonging. And so like for celebrating differences, we've seen that move from 67% to 73% to 76%. We're seeing that increase. That's what we want to see. When we look about promoting an inclusive setting, that question was asked in the last 2 years in a different area, since we've made this more robust in this area. And we see going from 74% to 82% in agreeing or strongly agreeing on an inclusive environment. So that's really important to us as we're looking at what do we have up on the walls around rooms as role models. When we look to our curriculum and the inclusive nature, all of that ties into this. So that's important for us as we're working with the DEI committee and all of the goals with that group, as well as whether it comes to just celebrating backgrounds and identity of who people are and what they bring and what we can celebrate about our diversity. It's more than what it used to be. We've seen that increase. We're all diverse in so many different ways. We all bring something different to the table. So to see the celebration of differences and the acceptance of people feeling that sense of belonging, I think that's what's really an important takeaway here, and that strong agreement from students.
Dr. Berdos, I think we talked about this in previous years. I really appreciate that the survey allows for a don't know answer rather than forcing people to punch that into something that might falsely be interpreted as a good or something we're missing. Also, sometimes the don't know is telling in and of itself for you all and building leaders too, but I appreciate that.
And that's a really good point when we think about the parents' perception.
Absolutely.
You saw a number of don't know. They're not going to necessarily know, but that helps us in how we communicate.
Exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So just to kind of give some bigger global areas here, kind of like the things that we lifted, kind of the overall strengths when we think about the schools, the students, the parents.
Overall, across stakeholders, we're seeing that we're consistently maintaining an environment that's safe and welcoming for all students. We're promoting acceptance, and we're making an intentional effort to treat our students equitably. Our students they care about each other. They respect each other's differences. That was really nice to see. And our students overall presented as being happy with the opportunities that they have available to them for being involved in school, and also their academic preparedness for the next grade level and their current grade level as well. Our students ranked highly on that. And our parents, we're very fortunate. We are a part of a community that is incredibly supportive of our schools and our student success. That came out very consistently, that our parents are supportive, and they, more often than not, are very in tune with what their student needs are, and that's a really good thing. That means that we can all collaborate with each other and help our kids.
And the other important message here is we're seeing this, we've given this for 10 years, and you continue to see the consistent high marks for the quality of education, the quality of supports for students when it comes to curriculum, instruction, mental health, all of that. That has remained really strong throughout all of these administrations. But we're always looking for where are the opportunities for growth when we look at student safety. As we've said a number of times here, looking at vaping and the concerns that students have brought forward, parents and faculty, helping students resolve conflicts. So when we think about some of the decision-making and self-awareness and all of those skills, how can we help them? They've said they've asked for that too. We've seen that in the data. And then helping them when it's, if there is mistreatment and not an inclusive environment, and not tolerating that it is not something that they want to see. When we look at the academic piece, as we've said, parents would like to have more feedback on how they can help their students academically. I think it's even more heightened now with the worry from having disruptions and getting back into a more routine in the last year. Transparency as far as on student learning experiences, the connection of the learning experiences to the real world, and then students' understanding of global issues. I think that part of that's going to be developmental too. When we look at the social emotional piece here in the areas of growth, having students to have the ability to express their emotions and their needs and to be able to articulate that. Also helping them try new things. When we talk about growth mindset, ask for help. That's really important. Helping them with managing their time. That is something parents have said, and students themselves and faculty have definitely brought that as an area. But when we talk about executive functioning skills, we know that that's important, and that's an important role that we play here. And then communication and helping students communicate with one another. As far as in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion, continue to improve the representation of our diverse backgrounds and celebrate that and have that to where it's right in the presence of all of our students. They can see themselves within the curriculum. They can see themselves within the community. And then lastly, really improving consideration of how cultural influences affect the way we communicate. Those are things such as having a translation button on newsletters that go out to make sure that there's access for all families. When you look at the percentage of languages of students, there's about 10% of our students that English is not their first language when we look at languages spoken at home. So it's important that we're able to have those documents translated for families.
You're here.
Were there any other points of interest that you haven't brought up, or other slides you wanted to go back to?
For context, is this, because I know the data comes out in stages and it takes quite a long time to even compile this and look at it, have the various building leads been able to, and your administrators had time with the data?
Yes, so we started actually with draft data in August at our leadership retreat.
Oh, good for you.
Which is not just building administrators, there's about 33, it's all department heads.
Great.
So all building leadership, our curriculum directors, our team chairs for special education. So they looked at some of the high-level data that we had in draft form at that point, and that helped inform any tweaks to school improvement plans as well.
Exactly. May I ask, I was curious to ask the principals who are here, like, anything that they were surprised of or things that they took away from the survey? And if not, I can ask them over email.
I think it's a great opportunity for any highlights that, particularly if you've not ever seen this kind of data before, you've got, 3 of them that it's the first time to ever see this volume of data.
Yeah, I guess I would just be curious, from the building principals here, if there were things that, when you were drilling down on your data, if there were things that really spoke to you in terms of how you want to look at your leadership within the building, especially since many of you are coming in fresh, or anything that just surprised you, I guess.
I can speak to the. Sorry, would you like me to?
You had.
If you don't mind, yeah, I'm sorry. I appreciate it.
I can speak to a couple points that stuck with me. Not, excuse me, not having the data in front of me.
Okay.
I can't give specific examples.
Sorry about
but
that.
Overall, some of the trends that presented themselves from the parent survey part that I was surprised about. Food services was a big part of it. Parents were I don't want to say they were concerned, but they were maybe not completely satisfied with the quality of the food.
Sure.
So I did some investigating there. I was also surprised by that. I think that we have excellent quality food at the borough and throughout the district.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that was the perception data from families. I believe that there was a brief period of time throughout the construction at Burroughs where some of the food was being prepared elsewhere and transported to the school. And to me, that kind of gave some good reasoning as to why that data was a little skewed. I spend a lot of time in the cafeteria. I consume some of the meals myself. I can speak personally to the high quality of the food here. So I took that one and I did some digging. The second trend that presented itself with the parent perception data was an appetite for more communication about curriculum in the school.
Sure.
So that is something that I am personally working on. As I communicate with families, I'm looking for opportunities to loop them in about curriculum information, curriculum initiatives, and just allow them to have a little bit more insight into teaching and learning at the Burroughs School. And then for the teacher perception data, there was a trend surrounding collaboration, creating more opportunities for collaboration throughout the school. That stood out to me. That was prior to having a PLC structure, which we now have in place,
Great.
which I think will help significantly with that. But that did present itself as a trend in that data, and I think that we're working on that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On the overall, I just trying to figure out how to word this. On the areas of growth, do you feel like, and I realize that they're, from a numbers perspective, the smallest population, we call out clearly parents and students. Do we feel like the faculty's concerns are adequately represented on this list? And you can say Yes, no, or?
I think you see really high marks from the faculty in the area of academic preparedness, but the areas of growth would come back to the collaboration
Okay.
piece that we talked about before.
So in particular, and I should have set this up, again, I wasn't prepared to ask my question correctly. Their two highest disagreement areas are conduct. Actually, they're both around conduct, which were safety and behavior dimension. Do you feel like that is represented in another point? It needs to be represented, or there are these things because of the population and the greater numbers that these represent, that those things don't need to be represented on this list?
I think it's in the first one when we look at student safety up there.
Okay.
You know, when it comes to addressing the vaping concerns, when it addresses, looking at the resolution of conflicts and working with student conduct or behaviors and being able to get along with each other in class.
Sure.
That ties in there from the faculty. That's what really surfaced.
Okay.
I'd also point to the social emotional category as well. When we see that national increase in adverse behavior and dysregulation with our students, that speaks to student ability to express emotions and express needs. Oftentimes our kids, when they are acting out, it's because they need something, and they're having a hard time articulating what that need is. So I think a lot of those data points, I don't think they're lost on this slide. I think they're embedded elsewhere.
Thank you.
Did any of the other principals want to speak? No pressure?
Uh-oh.
I saw some
think that was
grumblings, so I just
pressure.
wanted to make sure.
Well, I saw him kick you.
At the high school, in the data, some of the struggles that came out of, also came up in some of my entry meetings with teachers and parents about, and staff about attendance, vaping, some of the kind of the culture of what school discipline looked like. All of that kind of is present in the data in some of the concerns that came up. Hallways being, kids moving through the building a lot during the day. So all that was very clear in looking at this data. It aligned with the experience that people were sharing with me.
Nice. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions members of the committee have? Want to address Mr. Canfield?
Well, does anyone else want to go first? I guess. No, I should also say, I love a good survey, and I love all this data. So I really thank you guys for all the time that it took to compile this and prepare, and clearly you're well rehearsed. So just my gratitude in that, because this is really, really useful, which is why we've been doing it for 10 years. But I love talking about this kind of stuff. So thank you guys very much for preparing it for us and giving us such a thorough presentation.
I think, we're asking the questions and we're sharing it. We're being really transparent here. And so that's important. We have to be able to ask the hard questions and then identify where the areas of celebration lie, and then also where the areas of growth are, because we're constantly looking to continue to make a better environment from an academic standpoint for students, and supports for students and supports for faculty and staff. I mean, we have an unbelievable faculty and staff in this district, and you see that how much they appreciate teaching here, even as hard as it's been. They've worked really, really hard. So I think that the community is very supportive of our faculty and staff. We've got great kids. But at the end of the day, we want to look at where are the areas that we can grow as well.
And what's really nice about all of this data is all of our opportunities for growth are items that were already on our radar. There were already things that we're working on. They're embedded throughout our plans for success at the district and across each building and grade band. So it was actually fairly reaffirming that we were able to identify what it is we need to work on and take a look at. And the advantage of having this survey as really an institution here is that we're going to be able to measure our growth on a lot of what we're working on using surveys that we already have in place, which is really amazing to be able to do that as a district.
Well, so much of the leadership that's necessary from you and your team is that a priority setting. And if this can help you reaffirm your priorities and your action items that appear in the plan for success and then the school improvement plans, I would echo that. It gives a lot of confidence to the plans that we have moving forward.
And
Ms. Raymond.
I just wanted to comment that I think for parents out there who may be kind of looking at, all right, it's another survey, we all get so many surveys. This is a survey that it gets looked at, it's really telling, and I think the presentation tonight and just even hearing from the principals, it's really helpful when you're trying to determine pathways and growth and all of that of what to address.
Yeah.
And you're hearing directly from parents and staff and students, but then you get the data behind it as well that matches it. That's really informative. And so I would just encourage parents, when this comes around again at the end of the year, take the 5 minutes, 10 minutes to fill it out, because it is really being listened to. And I think that's great from a parent perspective. That's great to see. And it really does help drive where the focus is going to be. So thank you
Great
very
point,
much.
Michelle. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Any other points or questions from members of the committee? Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you so much for taking the time in your own buildings to do that, and for being put on the spot. I hate doing that to you.
Thank you.
He doesn't really. He likes doing that to you,
But only, yeah, no.
you can feign that all you want.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
He loves it.
Nicely said. Moving along. It's nice.
Put on the spot there.
Good friends. Next item is action item. We talked about the last meeting. This is the committee's job to appoint a member to the Town of Foxborough Audit Committee, because school committee gets to appoint somebody to that committee, and good thing too, since we are such a big chunk of the town budget. Thank you, leaders. Appreciate you.
Wait, one more question.
Oh, yeah.
No. And we had a last meeting put forward a name and a CV of Bernard Dumont. Mr. Yukna, did you have anything to add, or anything else, or Dr. Berdos or Dr. Burroughs, anything we should discuss?
I mean,
from
I've
this?
worked with Bernard in the past. I find him extremely knowledgeable. I think he's an excellent choice for this particular post, so I really,
We
have
did ask
no
him,
reservations.
right? We did ask Bernard if he wants to do this.
Oh, he volunteered.
He volunteered.
Submitted his
Yeah.
resume.
I thought we covered that.
We didn't.
He volunteered, he submitted a CV. We asked, we actually asked a number of people.
Okay.
And we actually had, so.
He just stepped out of the room, so we're putting him in.
Yeah, Mr. Dumont is recently retired from a long career in financial services and has a history of service on the town's advisory committee as a leader of that committee. He was instrumental in working with Mr. Yukna and the city manager to put on like a financial health and how-to for voters in town. So, yeah, I echo Mr. Yukna's statements. I'm delighted that he would like to step forward, especially in something as important as this. So.
With that being, I would like to make a motion that we appoint Bernard Dumont as our committee appointment to the audit committee.
I second.
Thank you both. All in favor? It's 500.
Thank you.
Lucky you, Bernard.
Thank you, Bernard.
Yep. Thank you.
Moving along, acceptance of donation, alto saxophones for the music department. Anybody like to speak to this, or?
Yeah. So Robert McCormick actually had contacted Cami Titoldi and asked to donate two alto saxophones to the music department. Cami would love to accept them and is hoping that you would accept the donation. They're worth approximately $450.
Excellent. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the donation with gratitude of 2 alto saxophone to the music department.
I second.
Thank you both so much. All in favor of accepting this generous donation? 500. Thank you so much to Mr. McCormick and for Mr. Doldy for setting it up, and make sure that they're well-loved and used as always. Moving on to other matters, because I am boring, I'll go in the same pattern. Ms. Ladani, do you have any other matters?
You know I do. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you. That was a wonderful show, those Boy Scouts coming, and they stayed for such a long time during the meeting, and what a nice group of young people, and I always love to see that. So I do have a few updates for the Recreation Department. We do have the Halloween Parade on October 29th on the Common, so that's coming up, and that's a community event. There will be carved pumpkins to line the Common from the 29th through the 31st, so our businesses, families, and different people will be donating those, so that'll be really nice to see. Lots of opportunities for National Honor Society, and I'm like a broken record, but I'm so proud to see all these kids time and time again stepping up to volunteer to help our community. So thank you very much to them, and to the proctors of the National Honor Society for leading such a wonderful group. We do have a Home Alone safety and babysitting training class coming up, which is great, and we have some really great life skills. And lastly, I got the pleasure of spending the night last night with our social group at the chapel on Mill Street, where we weren't able to cook. We didn't have a stove, but we enjoyed decorating cookies and having
cookies and hot cocoa.
we did. We had hot cocoa and frosting cookies, and some Foxborough High graduates were there, and we had a really great time. So that's just my own little personal side note, but it was awesome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ladani.
And Joe was there, and
Mr. Gary.
Just didn't mean to get off topic, but if you don't mind, I just wanted to remind you guys something about in 2 weeks.
What is it?
I know the next school committee meeting is November 1st, but I know with the town hall being open till 7 o'clock on Tuesday nights and it's early voting, we might have to start our meeting at 7:30 or do a different night because of early voting in here.
You're right. I think we should work with Mr. Cutler on that. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, I just think, Tuesday's the night.
For the reminder that it is early voting. 'cause
Right, exactly. You need to
Tuesday's
know
the
that
night
too.
that the town hall's always open later.
It is.
thank you, Joe.
Thank you for
We were
that.
going to do that 2 years ago, start later, but we didn't need to have that meeting when we were in hybrid remote learning because there was not enough agenda items for a full meeting.
I love that you remember that so accurately, because you're remembering it exactly correctly as it happened. Thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Gary.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
And I'm done.
Mr. Canfield, any other matters?
No, thank you.
Mr. Reuter has none.
I have none.
I have none.
Yours?
All set.
Mr. Yukon? Janet? Mr. Peterson?
Believe it or not, it's true.
Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor? 500. We stand in adjournment. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Night, everybody.